Hello and welcome to our third wall training session. Although we've built third wall as a plugin to be very easy to use and easy to learn, it is important that you do understand as an operator how this is going to help you and what it can do for you, and of course how to use it. So that's our goals in this session, is to really give you a little bit deeper insight into how to use third wall to your best advantage. To do that, here's what we'll cover in this session. We'll start with the basics. What is third wall? How do you use it? Some real basics, how to turn policies on and off, things like that. Then we'll talk through a review of all of our policies. We really need you to understand what they are, how to use them, what they can do for you, and some nuances of how to use them as well. Some of them have a few extra nuances that are important. We'll talk about profiles. Again, how to use profiles to take those policies and apply them across multiple locations easily. We'll then focus on individual computers where you make exceptions, where you use emergency action buttons, and you use some settings to move computers from one automate location to another location. We'll talk about global settings. There are a number of global settings on the integration screen. We'll show you all of our reports and data views so that you're familiar with each of those. We'll talk about tickets, why you get them, how do you resolve them, what do they mean, and we'll wrap up with permissions and talk about the different levels of permissions that are available to you. I will assume, as I'm talking through this, that you're familiar with Automate and all its nuances itself. We won't be doing an Automate training session, obviously, so hopefully you are all very well versed in using Automate. So with that being said, let's dive in. Let's move away from our website and let's go to the Automate Control Center. And here we have it, Automate Control Center. Pretty standard operation here. This is our test and demonstration environment, so I'll be walking through this for the duration of our training session today. You'll notice that we have a couple of clients, one we called ConnectWise, one we called Third Wall. We got very creative with our naming. We're going to start talking about, though, main office. This is a location within the Third Wall client, because locations are kind of the building block of what we do with Third Wall. That's where you apply policies, and that's the heart, again, of what we do. So let me double click on that and bring up an Automate location. This is our location number 3. And you can see fully integrated is a Third Wall tab. Everything you do in Third Wall is fully integrated into the Automate Control Center, so it's very easy to use. If I go here to this tab, you can see there are all 58 of our policies and their current status on the computers in this location. We have it all color coded for you. The yellow, according to our legend, means that the policy is not active. Green means the policy is turned on. You can see we have a couple of them turned on as we start today. And we have 4 more colors that we'll show you during the course of the session today so you understand what the colors mean. But generally, this page is not clickable. It is used for 2 purposes. 1, status, and 2, navigation. Notice these black lines are not policies. They are titles of subsections, and they correspond precisely with the titles on the left-hand side. We're going to use those to do all of our work. So for instance, if I want to turn on the disallow Microsoft accounts policy and start protecting these computers, I know that it's in the local built-in account management subtab. I go there, and sure enough, there is the disallow Microsoft accounts function, the policy. This one, to turn on, pretty simple. Just click the green slider switch, or it's green when I click it, and the save button turns green. Just click save, and we are now issuing this protection across all the computers in this location. This is going to actually use Automate commands. That's what we've just done, is we've issued an Automate command to each of the computers in this location saying, hey, start this protection. We do not use scripts of any form or fashion, so don't look for them. You will find our commands under Automate commands. This particular policy is going to prevent people from logging on using their personal Microsoft credentials, things like Windows Live, Hotmail, Windows 10, things that you could log into any Windows 10 computer you wanted to if you weren't specifically prohibited. So we've just specifically prohibited that. Now, our commands go down to the Automate agent because this is all part of Automate, right? We leverage a lot of Automate features. It will then pass it on to our agent. We are a fully certified remote agent plugin for Automate. And our agent is pretty much joined at the hip with the Automate agent. And then our agent will do a direct write to the registry. We do not depend on group policy. That way we can work on all Windows computers, not just domain Windows computers. And again, we only work on Windows computers. So there's an interesting advantage over group policy right off the bat. As long as it's got an Automate agent and it's a Windows computer, we will work on it. Well, I say that. We don't work on Windows Vista or XP, but those are getting a little long in the tooth. Um, so pretty straightforward. In this case, it uses a registry setting to implement these particular restrictions. If I go to the overview, you'll see this is now turned green and a date has shown up there. That date is the date that you turned on the policy, which we just did. You'll see the same date is repeated here. And that's going to be used in a report we'll show you a little later that you can hand to your auditors or your clients or your managers, whoever's interested in knowing that you are protecting these computers. So we'll show you that in a little while. You notice this undo link is also shown up. We'll come back to that. That is the primary way for removing this policy and its locations. Again, we'll come back to that. The other thing we do when we turn on a policy is we start a monitor. Now this is an Automate remote computer monitor, so it's going to run whether or not the computer's online or not, and it's going to check that setting every 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes. Very important. These are cybersecurity settings, and we do not want you to be vulnerable for more than 5 minutes. Therefore, we're going to check it every 5 minutes. And if we find that a setting is in the wrong values, incorrect, we will do two things. Like group policy, we're going to auto fix it. So your vulnerability is as little as 5 minutes, or probably under. And then second, we're going to send you a ticket. So if I go back to the control center, and we'll go to the service desk and look at tickets. These are standard Automate tickets. I'm going to click on all so we can see all of them. Ours start with TW as the prefix. Now we have 3 different reasons for giving you tickets. One of them, and the most common one, is, hey, we had to auto-fix some setting that you had put in place using third wall, and it's no longer in the right setting. So we want to protect you. We're going to set that value back and send you a ticket. So why a ticket? Because we think it's important for you to understand that somebody or something has changed a cybersecurity setting, so you can go investigate why. Thus, you get a ticket. Now, that being said, after 5 minutes, our monitor is going to run again. It will check that value, and if it's still in the corrected state, we will automatically close that ticket or resolve it. So we don't become this big open ticket spam machine. So you can, relax a little bit with that. But we still think you should go and investigate why that ticket had to be issued in the first place. What happened? Be proactive with your cybersecurity, because that's the only way that you will survive in the world today. So that's turning a policy on. We'll go back to where we were, and let's reverse course now and turn the policy off. There are 3 different ways. So this is one of the more confusing things I'll walk you through today. So just make sure and you get this sequence down. One way is to use the same green slider switch. If I click on that, the slider goes off, but if you read carefully, this turns the policy's monitor off, but it's not going to change those underlying restricting values, and therefore we don't recommend it. It's probably not what you're trying to do. Consider an undo instead, which I had mentioned earlier. We do allow this. Just get rid of the monitor, but not the restrictions. Click the Save button. We give you another little bit of a warning: inconsistent settings may result. And we give you a third warning. If you go back here, we give you the danger, danger, Will Robinson orange, saying, are you sure that's what you wanted to do? So it may be, but not normally what you want to do to get rid of a policy. So probably just turn it back on, click Save again, and let's go use the more thorough and complete way, which is the undo. So if I click on the undo link, this is actually going to issue an Automate command. Click here, and for most policies, I'm going to get 2 choices. I can do a full undo or a temporary exception, a temporary suspension for that policy. Let's just do a full undo, which both gets rid of the restrictive settings and the monitor. Click Save. We are now issuing the undo via commands, of course, to every computer in this location, and this has gone back to yellow, showing you, hey, we've removed that policy and its restrictions. Let's turn it back on and use the other option. The other option is, of course, the undo link temporary exception. So if I click here, this is actually a full undo. Same thing, we get rid of both the monitor and the restrictions, the settings, but it's on a timer. So this slider can set that timer anywhere from 5 minutes up to a full hour. And there we go. We'll leave it at an hour and click save here. We're now issuing an undo, but we've also started the timer. So these restrictions are gone. And this is now turned pink. Pink says the temporary undo is active. Notice that the date is still there. We preserve the date for your reporting purposes since this is a very controlled, requested situation with a very limited duration. So the question is then, why do we have this? Well, you'll see as we walk through this that ThirdWall is a very powerful tool for you to help lock down your environment in ways that make a lot of sense and you've probably wanted to do for a long time. But there may come a point, probably will be a point where you and your colleagues as administrators need to do something and ThirdWall is stopping you from doing it. Use the temporary undo, get rid of the restrictions and the monitor for up to an hour. Do what you need to do on the computers in this location, and you cannot forget to turn the protection back on because ThirdWall will do it for you at the end of that time period. So that's why we have the temporary exceptions or the temporary suspensions. I'm not going to wait for an hour. I can actually click undo, and now I can remove that suspension if I prefer. So I'll click save, and the suspension is going away, and you can see that this has gone back to green. So that's turning the policies on and off. Let's shift gears now and talk about the policies themselves. So I'm going to go back to this page, and I have 7 pages of policies. This will take a little while, but it's important that you really understand what the policies do and some of the nuances so you don't get yourself in trouble with something you don't understand about a policy. So we'll walk through all that today. By the way, all of this is fully described on our website. So here's our website, third-wall.com. Under Resources tab, if you go there, you will see there are instructions. And the operational instructions are pretty comprehensive, show you everything about ThirdWall that you need to know. So there you go. These are all described. All the policies are described. If you scroll down and down and down, there are descriptions. So really useful to have this available for you, and I recommend that you download it and save it and use it as a reference as you're going through all of this. Meantime, let's go back to the training. On this page, to start with, there are a number of policies. The first 3 are all about protecting the local administrator account. Now, this is important. This will only impact the built-in Windows local administrator account. So if you've created a secondary one, which most of our clients have, we will not touch that. It's not what this is about. This is about protecting a huge attack point. Hackers want to get in and take over the local administrator account because A, they know that it's there, and B, they know what the default name is. So half their problem is solved. Default name, of course, of the local administrator account is administrator. Let's change that to, we'll change it to Bob. So their job is going to be a little tougher. You can, if you wish, click here. This will save you some tickets. A secondary reason for us to give you tickets is, hey, we tried to apply a policy, but we failed for some reason. And this little checkbox here will help you avoid that situation. Because if you want us to rename the local administrator account, but the local administrator account is already disabled as you try to do this, then you're going to get a ticket. We can't obviously change the name of a disabled account. So if you click this, then what we would do is we would automatically enable it and then change the name. So that's available to you there. And you can also hide the administrator account from the logon screen if you so choose. You can also set the local administrator password at the same time if you wish to whatever you want. I'll name it password 1. Get very creative. It has the same auto enable checkbox. These are synced together as you can see. And you'll notice that when I cursor away from it, it gets hidden in compliance with helping you comply with various regulations, cybersecurity regulations. So it gets stored on an Automate table, but encrypted on the Automate table. So the only place you'll find it in clear text is right here if you cursor over it. Notice also there is an asterisk at the end of each of these. That asterisk means that these policies will not apply to Windows servers, but only to Windows workstations. Some of our policies, based on feedback from our clients, simply do not make sense or should not be applied to servers, and these are two of them. You'll also notice that this one is grayed out. You cannot do these two or either one of them and this one. They're mutually exclusive, so we'll simply gray it out for obvious reasons. Now I've not hit save. You notice the save button is still green, so I don't have to undo these to get rid of them. I can just deselect. This is now available, and I can select that instead, and those two gray out. So one way or another, most of our clients protect the local administrator account from attack. Because if something gets in and gets those elevated privileges, you're in deep trouble. So that's pretty straightforward. Disabling the guest count, obvious what that does. It's going to, the real reason why we do this is because of the monitor. The guest count is disabled out of the box by Windows, so we're going to check it every 5 minutes to see if somebody or something has turned it on and opened a vulnerability that you want to get rid of. So that's why the disabled guest account is there. Plus, we send you a ticket if we do it, so you can go and investigate, and of course we put it on the report, proving that you're protecting it and checking it every 5 minutes. We talked about disallow Microsoft accounts. There's one more thing to mention here. If you use this, it can, in fact, will interfere with Azure AD, because Azure AD binds with Microsoft accounts. They're at this point pretty inseparable. We have not yet figured out a way to separate them. So if you use this, you may have an issue with Microsoft accounts. But that's okay. You've got 58 others to choose from if you don't use this one, or 57 others rather. So there's lots of choices, and customization with something as easy to use as ThirdWall is kind of a key, making it easy to use, far easier than group policy or scripts or whatever else you might try to use to try and get these things, same things done. Quick question on the policies on this page. If you were to turn these policies on, would any of your end users even notice that you've turned them on? And with the exception of Azure AD, the answer is probably not for most of our clients in most situations. We call those types of policies no-brainers. You can deploy them as you see fit without worrying about pushback from end users, because they won't even know that you're protecting them. Really good protection, no pushback, no-brainer. Why wouldn't you just do that? And if you are in the service provider business as opposed to internal IT, then you might think about revenue. Can I get extra revenue from these policies? And you look at these and you say probably not, because these aren't ones that your end user, your client's management isn't even going to understand what protections these are in most cases. So these particular policies may not get you additional revenue unless you bundle them in some sort of premium package as part of a bigger package, either all ThirdWall or ThirdWall plus other things, which a lot of our clients do. We do have an interesting matrix on our website I'd like to show you. Again, under thirdwall.com/resources. So we're in the resources tab. Under onboard your clients, and this applies to both internal and external clients, but here is a policy matrix that I think you'll like. Click here to go view it. And we've mapped out our policies on these two dimensions I was just talking about. Are you going to get pushback from your end users or not? If you aren't, no-brainers. Of course, use your judgment on these, not just ours. This is our best guess. But there's a lot of them there that we think have great potential for not being noticed by end users. But the ones on the top are all ask first. They have various ramifications, and you better ask first and coordinate first before you turn any of these policies on. On the bottom, for those of you who are service providers, the ones on the left are probably not going to resonate well with your clients to get extra revenue unless, again, you include them as a bundled tier. But they will, for all of you, prevent issues. Fewer tickets, fewer disasters, fewer phone calls, fewer disasters. Did I say fewer disasters? Yeah, we tend to stop a lot of disasters for our clients. These on the right-hand side are going to be similar. They'll prevent issues, but some of them may be much more valuable for generating additional revenue. Things like our user logon report. There are several here that are connected with ransomware, and those may resonate well and get you additional revenue by themselves. So we think you should take a look at that particular table as you're deciding what to deploy where. All right, so let's go from page 1 to page 2. Number of policies here. The first 3 are all about protecting the local password, not domain, local password, or local passwords if there are multiple. For length, age, and complexity, you may be doing this already via group policy, but again, we check more frequently. We include it in a report. We send you tickets if we have to auto fix it. There are just so many advantages of third wall over group policy, despite being a whole lot easier just to start with, right? So you might want to use these for managing those in your environment. Same with password protected screensaver, pretty obvious what that does. I've got this turned on already, and I've got it set to 30 minutes of idle time. So any computer in this location after that much idle time will go into a locked condition. Requires a password to get back in. So that's pretty much required these days as well. I can take the slider and go up to a couple of hours, or I can take it down to as few as 5 minutes. Now I'm going to put it at 5 minutes and leave it there. We'll come back to it after a while. If you are like most of our clients, then you give your end users, some or all, local admin privileges through group assignment. You put them in the local admin group. They have special privileges, elevated privileges, which is good for some tools, but really, really bad for other tools that are now available to them. And by the way, to any malware that takes over an end user's account, which unfortunately does happen. So if you want to take away some of those bad tools, this particular policy is going to help you do that. Click here and you can choose from these 8 different tools, taking them away from end users. No more registry editor, no more run as admin, no more PowerShell. Well, maybe you want PowerShell. Maybe PowerShell needs to be turned on locally. There you go. Just don't click it there and it will be turned on locally. About half of our clients turn it off, about half of them don't. The control panel, task manager, some other things you may want end users to have those tools, but that's up to you. Again, customize this for whatever makes sense for your particular situation. Now, these are going to also block a lot of your ability to use these tools. So how do you get around that? Well, there are actually 3 different ways. One is use that temporary undo that I showed you earlier. That will really help a lot. But just so you're aware that the undo for this particular policy may require you to reboot those computers to regain full functionality of all these tools. Either reboot or sign out, sign back in for a particular user. In particular, we've noticed that Run as Admin and PowerShell are ones that really almost always require that reboot or sign out, sign in to get that functionality back. Okay, so there's one that you need to be aware of, some nuances to this particular policy. You can also, by the way, just simply exempt anybody who signed in as the true local administrator or the true domain administrator from the restrictions of this policy. So that's 2. Or the third way is run any of these directly from the Automate Control Center, either through the tool set or via script, because Automate runs as the local systems administrator and ignores these restrictions. So that gives you the ability to do these things without worrying about the local user. So those are various things. Now, if you log in with Screen Connect or Control into a computer, you're running as a local user. You're not running as the local systems administrator. So it will be impacted by these unless you use those other techniques that I told you about. Next one down is Windows UAC. Everybody knows what UAC is. We just duplicate the control panel precisely. You can go to level 3, which is best practice to at least notify people that something's being done to their computer. But some of our clients run level 1 because the UAC can interfere with their ERP. So again, customization for what works for you is really key, and we make it so easy. If you have end users who like to install unwanted software, and don't we all, right? Then you can use these 2 policies to help put some roadblocks up. Click here. You will then stop anybody from running any setup or install executable and any variant thereof. Those are wildcards, the asterisks inside. So that will stop a ton of unwanted software. Now, we can do the same thing with Windows Installer. MSI files. You can stop everybody from running a Windows installer. Now, how do you get around these when you're the administrator? Well, a couple different ways. One is run any of these, again, from the Automate Control Center, and they will run. So you've got that available to you, again, directly or via script. Second is for this, or for either one of these, use the temporary undo. Now, again, these 2, and most of our policies don't require this, but these 2 also may require a reboot or sign out, sign back in order to get them to work. So that's something to consider with the undo, either full undo or temporary undo. The third way, though, for this one is using the just, well, let me change that a little bit. Not using, but changing the spelling of each of these. The wildcards identify it clearly as a word match, and we are matching setup and install word. Just change the spelling of either one of those a little bit, and they will run. Don't tell your end users that. They will not figure it out, but that's one way for you to get around it. And also, we've got a way to do exceptions for this using a feature I'll show you in a minute that's really designed for app data exceptions, but it also allows you to use these to make an exception for these. Okay. Now on this Windows installer one, we actually have a radio button that's very useful. The disable all MSI files will disable all of them except for the conditions I just described. And then there's the disable unmanaged MSI files. That will only stop unmanaged MSI files. What are those? Those are MSI files being run by someone who's not logged on as an administrator. So if you're an administrator, works, otherwise it will not launch. So again, some different ways to prevent unwanted software. So let's move on to the next page, OS security. The number of good policies here. The first one is all about stopping Microsoft from spying on your end users using their Windows 10 keylogger, which is turned on by default. And Microsoft doesn't like you turning it off. In fact, their privacy setting that they have that allows you to turn it off really doesn't work for most versions of Windows, but our policy does. That comes with a side effect, though. We pop this up and it says, hey, this will not allow remotes to use Microsoft Cloud services, including Intune and Azure services. So you may not want to use this in all your locations. Just be aware that there are some different things that this could impact. And we try and warn you as best we can of things we know about because we are locking down your environment. The next one here is very popular, enable a logon message, especially with our service provider clients. Wouldn't you like every time that somebody logs in have protected by me? Well, of course, you don't type in me, you type in your company, your brand there. So you get branded every time somebody logs on. That's something that a lot of our service providers really like. And then you can put the appropriate disclaimer, which is, of course, appropriate for all of you, service provider or not. It can be HIPAA, PCI, whatever it is that you are required to do for a particular location or the computers in that location. Or you can just put, hey, private property, hands off, no unauthorized use. And then you can put a special notice if you want to. Just like that, special notice, and it's just as simple to change as I just did. All right? So, hey, everybody, leave your computers on tonight, so you get the idea. Smart Screen is another true no-brainer. It prevents end users from doing stupid stuff with Microsoft browsers. You should at least warn them when they're doing something stupid, right? So again, we consider that to be a no-brainer. UPnP and Autorun, I think you're all aware of what those are. They can be vulnerable attack points still. So disable them if you are so inclined. Our disable autorun policy simply suppresses that pop-up that comes up saying, what would you like to do with this stick that you just inserted? So it removes temptation. Kind of a no-brainer, and a lot of our clients use at least this one. But again, you get to choose which ones you want to use to lock down your environment. Then one of our big heavyweights, disable executables running from the app data folder. Up to 9 layers deep, by the way. Why is this policy there? Because this is targeting ransomware. Ransomware, to this day, still likes to bury itself as an executable deep in the app data folder and then launch later when it's ready, sometimes in a coordinated attack. So this will stop it cold. But there are a lot of moving parts to this, so let's take a look at the moving parts. The symbology here, you should recognize this is the app data roaming folder. You can also include local app data, which we certainly recommend. That's a lot of ransomware now is burying itself there. Where you can't find it, we'll block it later when it launches. Also, alert on file block is an interesting option. If ThirdWall blocks a particular file, we will send you a ticket that will identify the pathway, the computer, the pathway, and the file name of what we just blocked. And that's going to be one of two things. Either ThirdWall just stopped ransomware and you're a hero, make sure the right people know about that, or we just blocked something that you don't want blocked and you say, oh, geez, no, I can't block that. I need to add it to the whitelist. And whitelist is really important with this particular policy. We have two of them, as you'll see in a minute. Without those whitelists, this policy is actually pretty useless. And then the last option here is block all executable types. Without this, we'll block EXEs, but there are 30 more executable types other than EXE files. This will block the other 30. So be careful with this. Make sure you go into our documentation and read about what those are and do a little research as to what those are, because this will require far more whitelisting than if you don't do it. But it will give you better protection. You just have to be prepared to do more whitelisting. So with that, let's go take a look at our whitelists. Again, fully integrated into the Automate Control Center, as you might imagine. One of the whitelists is global, so we put it in the system dashboard. So I've got that open already. Here is the system dashboard, standard system dashboard for Automate with a config integration screen. And when ThirdWall is installed, of course, there is a ThirdWall tab. A number of different options. We'll come back to these a little bit later, but we're going to focus right now on this global executables block exceptions, whitelisting for app data. So you can see there's the app data exceptions list. To whitelist, click the add button, type in the appropriate pathway. Now you can't use wildcards. You must use the app data or local app data wildcards, and that eats up the wildcards. So you can't actually use any additional wildcards for this, which means you have to type out all of the pathways that you want to globally whitelist. So that can be a little cumbersome. It's very effective, but it can be a little cumbersome if you've got a bunch. So we've given you an alternative. You can use both this and the other one if you want, or one or the other. They all work. But the other one is at the client level. So I'm just going to cancel out here. And then instead of at the global level, we're going to go and open up a client. We're going to open up ThirdWall as a client. And pretty standard client in Automate, client number 2. There is a ThirdWall tab there. And this doesn't look right. This is USB wall. I want to get whitelisting. Yeah, there are actually two different screens in this particular tab. One of them is USB wall, which we'll come back to. One of them is this app data whitelisting, the exception, app data executables, exceptions, and discovery. So I'm going to click here, and we go to another page completely. Now I'm going to start out with the magic button on this page, which is this scan all button. If I were to click this, then I would initiate a local scan of every single computer in this entire client. Every one of them would do a local scan in the app data roaming and local app data folders, up to 14 layers deep, and then they would send back a deduplicated list. We would deduplicate it for you, so it's easier to manage, of every single executable that we find in the entire client. Again, deduplicated across all the computers that report in. And we'll deposit that under this scan results page. Before I go to that, I want to show you this scan targets link here. Click on this. If you want, we will then also look for those other 30 types of executables. So there they are. And if you check all, we will search not only for EXEs, but for all of these as well, or you can pick and choose which of these you want to search for and bring back as part of your deduplicated list. Easy for me to say. And there you go. So that's going to be a good option for you if you use that one button that I showed you to add the other 30 executable types. Let's go look at scan results. What we brought back, there's a number of things. Now you can just click, 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 one at a time if you want to, and click save. And or instead of doing that, I'm going to click here on the search bar, and I'm going to click zoom. You might want to click ConnectWise, by the way. ConnectWise runs a number of things that require whitelisting out of the app data folder. But I'm going to search on zoom, and we found 10 matches and applied check mark to all of them. All right, so there you go. There are the 10. I'm now just hit save, and it will save them and deposit them in the current exceptions page. So if I go there, sure enough, there they are, and those are all whitelisted now. And I can also, by the way, while I'm here, add manual exceptions. Click here and just type in the pathway and file name, and those will be whitelisted for this client as well. And this is also where you can add exceptions for the executables that I showed you earlier, the install and well, let me go back and show you. set up and install executables, you can whitelist them on this same exact page. Okay, so that's a pretty powerful feature. That is part of the app data blocking and stopping of ransomware. I'm going to flip this back to USB wall because we'll be coming back to that in a little while. All right, back to this screen here. The last policy here is disable terminal server services. This is all about RDP. RDP is a huge hacker attack point. And if you want to protect it, the best way to do it is to actually turn it off at the service level and no longer vulnerable, either at workstations or servers or both or neither. And again, you'll probably not want to use this where you're heavily using RDP and some of the services associated with RDP. But that's, again, pretty popular policy for our clients. Okay, moving on. Let's go to Data IO Security, the next tab down. This is all about stopping data theft, not by hackers. We've got lots of things that are going to help you stop hackers, but this is really targeted at those internal people, employees and contractors who have access to confidential and proprietary information every single day and unfortunately are prone to steal it. Verizon says well over 50% of people who have access at some point are going to steal it. That's a real problem for clients, for your clients and your organizations. So let's give you some tools to help stop that. The first one, pretty obvious. We're going to no longer allow people to write to a disk. Just that simple. Now notice how this one's grayed out. You have to choose disable writing or disable reading and writing to disks. So we'll choose disable writing for now. There are 3 different options to restrict USB storage devices. One of them is here. This is the most restrictive. No more reading or writing to USB storage devices. Of course, a mouse, keyboard, those things will still work, but storage devices, nope. Phones, for instance, you can still charge one, but you can't use the storage features on it when this is turned on. If that's too restrictive, then you can click here instead, disable writing instead of reading and writing, or you can choose USB wall as your third option. And again, the other 2 gray out. What is USB wall? This is something we created. It starts out very much like this one, where we are we're just basically stopping all reading and writing to USB storage devices. But you, as the service provider or the IT team, can register USB devices. Now, as I make this video, it's restricted to just USB sticks, but we are expanding that to other devices. You'll have to check our release notes to see if by the time you view this, we've expanded this to additional devices, but actually that should be out pretty soon. With USB wall, then you can register those USB devices, and those that you register will work and nothing else will. So that's a very cool feature. It's a partial lockdown. Say you have a client or a team that you want to lock down and only have a few people that have access to USB storage. Register enough devices. We recommend that you use data sticks and brand them. You buy them in bulk and brand them as special sticks, however you feel is appropriate, especially if you're a service provider, because then you can, of course, sell those for profit to your end users, your clients who need them. A pretty slick way to make a little money off of third wall. And then those get handed out only to highly trusted individuals. There is more to this this particular policy though. If I go back here, we'll take a look at our first data view. I'm going to right click, whatever level I want. I'm going to go to data views. I'm going to go to third wall. Now it's a built-in section for data views, and there is a USB wall file transfer audit section. Go there, and this will show you the file name of every file written to a registered stick or device, which are the only ones that work. So this is comprehensive. It's a comprehensive list of everything that's been written to a USB device. And this will show you the last 60 days worth of the file name, who did the transfer, what time they did it, and the name of the computer they did it from, amongst other things. So this is a very powerful piece of information. You can then export it to Excel, standard Automate data view, export it to Excel, send that to the appropriate people, your client or your managers. They can look through it and find out if somebody, Bobby, has been writing files that Bobby should not be writing to a USB device. And appropriate consequences occur, right? So that's a pretty popular feature for a lot of our clients. Now, how do you register a stick? You actually do it at the client level, not at the location level. So I'm going to open up the client again, and we're back to USB wall. As you recall, this is where we did the whitelisting for app data, but now we're on the USB wall screen. To whitelist it, on a computer running an Automate Control Center, like I'm doing right now, click the Capture Pens, which is for USB devices. Again, currently just sticks. We go into the capture mode, and now on this same computer, you need to physically insert that stick, or again later, other type of device. It has to be on this computer for security purposes. It can't be a remote location where you do this. Insert the stick, and we will register it. It takes about 5 seconds. We are actually going to capture the serial number. We're going to modify it so that it's unique, because the serial numbers are not unique on USB devices. And then we're going to store it on a file, encrypt the file, and put it as a hidden file on that stick. If somebody inserts a device that doesn't have the appropriate registered file on that device, it's not going to work. Simple as that. Simple as that. So this is a pretty popular feature. Now, we do, for now, recommend on the stick side that you use sticks that are formatted NTFS, not FAT32. NTFS allows us to capture the username for that data view that I showed you, whereas FAT32 does not. We are working on changing that, but as I speak, highly recommend you use NTFS data sticks, not FAT32. I'm going to just end the capture, stop here, and move on from there. Okay, so that is got a lot of moving parts, very popular feature. More simply, you can simply disable Common Cloud Storage. Here's an evolving list. This will, of course, change over time, but it will no longer allow people to get to any of these. Now, this mechanism is using simply host files. We're appending the host file on each computer. So pretty straightforward, but it works extremely well for almost all users. If you are blocking the changing of host files, some antivirus allows you to do that. Then you'll have to turn off that feature, then turn on this policy, and then turn that feature back on after the host file has been amended or appended. Okay, so that's just a little trick on that particular one. The last policy here is a little different. You know, when people delete files, they're not really deleted, just the pointers are removed. Files still sitting there, easy to recover by anybody, whether you want them to or not. So if you want to get rid of those files, click here, and on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, your choice, we will run a 3-pass overwrite of all of those files that have been deleted so that nobody can then recover them later. So that's a pretty good way to get rid of ghost files. You have an option to suppress those if they're delayed. Otherwise, they'll run the next day. All right, application security. Next page down. The first one is a work in progress, uninstall blacklisted applications. You know that Automate has a blacklist feature where you can blacklist an application. We're going to take that one further. If you blacklist that within Automate, so we use the blacklist out of Automate, we'll look for those files on end users' computers, and if we see them, if we see those applications, we will automatically and silently uninstall them if they're blacklisted. But here's the work in progress piece, only if they're MSI files. We have not written the executable side, so don't look for us to be automatically uninstalling executables. We won't do it. We'll just do that for MSI files for now. This one, however, is probably much more important from a security perspective. Prevent public webmail access. Why? Because phishing on private email or personal email is still the most common entry path for malware into small and medium businesses. You will want to stop that, almost certainly. But this is not a no-brainer. Clearly not a no-brainer. So you go to the CEO of your company or your client and you say, hey, we'd like to do this. And we need to announce it. And this is why we'd like to do it. What do you think? And the CEO is going to say, that's a great idea. Let's do that. But you're not going to stop me from getting to my Gmail, right? I am, after all, the CEO. And you just say, no problem, because remember, you can make an exception to any policy that you want to on any computer you want to in Third Wall very, very easily. I'll show you that when we get to the computer screen. So that's going to be very useful for you. And again, this will be an evolving list. And again, this appends the local host file. Same thing here. This is host file based, prevent social media access. You can stop Facebook and Instagram, even Tinder, from being run on these particular computers. You're going to make sure, you're certainly going to want to make sure to make exceptions for the marketing team and other people like that. But again, very popular feature. These three are the three stores. You recognize those. Leave it at that. These two down here are should be well known by you, I think. Microsoft keeps putting out warnings about piggyback malware on macros and OLE in Office documents. And this just turns those off, disables macros and OLE, depending on which policy, completely. They're going to not work from outside documents that are downloaded from the internet or that are brought in via external email domain. They're just not going to work when people launch those documents. So these are not quite no-brainers, but we strongly recommend that you go ahead and turn those on. Protocol security, next page down. The first two are all about the Windows firewall. If you'd like to use the Windows firewall, click here, or both. We'll turn on the Windows firewall for you and monitor it to make sure it stays on every 5 minutes. Remember our monitors. And fix it within 5 minutes if it happens to get turned off, which Windows firewalls seem to have that happen periodically. So this will reduce that window of vulnerability down to 5 minutes or less. Now, if you want, you can also create a rules set within Windows, and we will enforce that for you on this with this policy. Go into your Windows toolset on this computer where you're running the Automate Control Center and create a WFW file with the appropriate rules that you want to enforce. Then, after you've saved it, click here, Assign Configuration File, and we'll bring up File Explorer. You just go find that file, double click on it, and we will start enforcing those rules across this entire location. So that gives you a pretty slick way of creating a rules set for certain behaviors that you want to control with a firewall. There is an interesting backdoor. A lot of our clients want the Windows firewall to be turned off and to stay off. So again, in our documentation, which I showed you earlier, I'll leave you to go look that up. There is a backdoor for creating, using these policies to turn the Windows firewall off, and we'll monitor it every 5 minutes to make sure it stays off. Again, in our documentation, I'll let you go look at that. Now, starting from here down, these are all well-known other protocols, Windows protocols, that some of them are obsolete, some of them are not, but they're all known attack points. So best practices says disable these, but only if you can. And that's an interesting caveat. Now, these are all vulnerable, but SMBV1 is the example I like to use. SMBV1 was how WannaCry got around not that long ago. If you disable SMBV1, well, WannaCry is going to be stopped cold. So that's good. But you'll also get some phone calls from people who say, hey, how come I can no longer scan to computer? Turns out that a lot of scanners, and particularly all-in-ones, use SMBV1 as their scan to computer protocol, and therefore you are disabling a desired feature when you disable SMBV1. So there could be unintended consequences that you may or may not be able to live with. So you get to make choices. The idea here is turn these on in a small portion of your environment or environments. Make sure you test them out to see if anything is adversely impacted. We can't tell you what might be. There's way too much software and firmware out there that might be using some of these protocols that we have no idea. So do a little testing, find out if there's adverse side effects and whether you can live with those or not. And once you've done that, then yeah, absolutely start turning these things on to go forward. Now there's one of these that's actually not going to cause any adverse effects. It's just an audit function checking for NTLM traffic that will help you decide whether you can disable LM NTLM v1 or not. Okay, so those are some different features on this page. All right, last page. Told you there's a lot to cover here. We have a lot of features in Third Wall. Stick with me. Take a break if you need to, since it's all recorded, but let's go to the last page and figure out how to go from here. So this is probably our favorite page. A lot of moving parts. Let's walk through them. First one is simply going to cause Windows log file to log both log on and log off events. Now, by default, Windows log files only log on events. So this policy is going to force the issue and cause the log off events to also be captured, which unfortunately causes the Windows log file to have twice as many events. And we know it's already difficult to use, so we've made it more difficult to use. But then we come rushing to the rescue with this user logon report. What this does when you turn it on is it uses this data and it filters it. And it will bring back to an Automate table 60 days worth of just user logon data. User logon, log off, unlock, lock, and logon failure, and get rid of all the redundancy that you see in Windows log files. So this becomes extremely useful information, easy for you to see in two different formats. One is a report and one is a data view. So we'll go look at those in a second. But before I do that, there is an option here, an optional checkbox. Include type 3 logon failures. Type 3 is network logon failures. So if you select that, we will also capture not only all the user data, but also network logon failures. Not other network events, but just the logon failures. And you'll see why here shortly. But first, let's go take a look at the report and the data view. So the report, as you might guess, is in the report center. So I'm going to go to the Automate Control Center, Tools, Report Center, and let's bring this up. Expand it out. There's the report center. I'm going to go to the report list. Wait for it and scroll down to the bottom. Once it loads, there it goes. And there is the third wall logon report. Now this is a client level report. I'm going to select ConnectWise where I know I have some data, and then we're going to view the report. And there it is. This is our report. Now, a lot of things to cover right off the bat. Notice that there's a logo. This is a standard Automate report. Therefore, you can brand it with whatever brand that you want. We kind of recommend your own. Just use the report branding tool within Automate to report this and all your other reports with your brand. Second is notice the date range. The date is exactly 1 month plus a day looking backwards from the day before you run the report. So I just ran this report. Today is September 17th, 2020. And the report is for September 16th, going backwards a month and a day. We do overnight processing to prep this data so it's easy to generate. So we only report starting with yesterday, going backwards. Why do we do a month and a day? So that you can then use this new scheduling wizard within Automate to schedule this to happen every single month automatically. And it will then send you or your clients or your managers or whoever you designate an email with a PDF of the report. You can then save it, and then you have a full archive of all the user logon events going back for to the day that you turn on this policy. So that's why we make it a month and a day looking backwards. Okay, let's look at the data itself. Now, the only thing you can change in this is when you run it and the client that you choose, that you select. All the other data is hard-coded. You cannot change it. You can, if you want to, export it, standard Automate function, but the report itself is hard-coded, including, for instance, sorting. It's pre-sorted by domain and then by user. So it's easy to find a particular user. We're looking at Scott, which happens to be me. And then next by sort level is by computer, and then by the start time of the event itself. So let's look at the events. There are logons, unlocks, logon, unlock, logon, unlock, logon. Wait a minute, Scott. These are all logon type events. Where, an unlock is merely another type of logon event, right? Where are the log off type events that we had to capture? They're over here in the end column. So we've paired them for you. So for instance, on August 31st, I logged on here. At this time, I logged off there. A couple of days, 2 days and 18 hours and 38 minutes and 22 seconds later, I logged off. So my computer was logged on for a long time. That was a really long day. Of course, not really. I wasn't working that entire time. But if you look below that, this is an unlock and a lock paired. Unlock, lock, you can see several different pairs of unlocks and locks. Those are all subsets of this logon report. Or this logon event rather. So all that time I was logged on here was when my computer was actually unlocked, and ostensibly I was working on it. So that's pretty powerful information. Now, it gets even better. Let me go back to one of our policies we turned on a while back. Way back here in local user account management. Remember, password protected screensaver. I left it set at 5 minutes of idle time. So if there is, let's say you might have a problem employee. We'll call him Joe, and Joe is working from home, which in this day and age and going forward is pretty common. But Joe's boss is a little worried about that because Joe's not a very good employee. And sure enough, Joe logs in one morning, a few minutes late, but he's okay, and works for an hour. And then he says, hey, I really need to go binge watch the rest of that Netflix series. And off he goes. 5 minutes after he leaves, his computer's going to lock. Where does that show up? Of course, it shows up right here in this report. And maybe he's gone for 5 hours. You think Joe's boss might like to know that? Yeah, of course. So this becomes not only a tool for compliance, which is why we built it. A lot of cyber security compliance regulations require this, but it's also a tool for managing those employees that you're worried about, the bad employees, and finding out, are they really working or not? This has become invaluable for our clients and for our service provider clients. It's earning a ton of additional revenue. So something to consider about if you are on the marketing side. All right, so that's the report. Let's go look at the data view that goes with it. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to right click. I'll right click at ConnectWise where I have data. Wait for it. There goes the data view, and there is third wall, and there is a user login audit. All right, I'm going to click on that, and this is all exactly the same data, except for we're going to show you all 60 days of data that we store instead of a month and a day. We don't pair anything for you, so every event is going to have its own line item. But you can then search it, filter it, sort it, whatever you want to do. Find out what Bobby's doing, what Scott's doing, or you can find out who was in the office on Tuesday night. So a really good forensic search tool. You'll also find on this page, and you won't find it on the reports, are failed logons. Failed logons are relegated to the data view because we don't want them cluttering up the report itself. Why? Because you can have a lot of failed logons. I mean, a lot. Particularly if you selected that option for capturing network logon failures. They will show up here instead of in the report. We have seen clients who have had 500,000 of those in a single month. Whoa. But they were all benign and quote unquote legitimate. They were printers, domain printers, trying to log on to all the networked computers twice per second for every computer and failing because, of course, they had outdated credentials, but they didn't know that. So it was generating internally literally 500,000 network logon failures in a single month. So that's why we relegated them to this rather than to the report. But that becomes very useful. If I go back here and I have included those, you're going to want to know what those network logon failures are and clean them up so they're not happening from your own internal benign causes. Because later on, you can see there's a logon type 3 for logon failures on this policy as well. We'll come back to that. But first, let's look at the next one down here, enhanced security event logging. This was designed for our clients who need to comply with US HIPAA, which requires 15 additional security event logs that are not turned on by default within Windows. This will turn them on. You can find out what they are in our documentation. We just store them locally. Don't do any reporting on them, which is all that's required. The next one down is one of my favorites. Monitor for event log clearing. Why? Well, because first of all, it is a no-brainer. I mean, this is a true no-brainer. All it does is send you a ticket. So end users will never know that you're protecting them. Second reason, well, what is this? When does this send you a ticket? When the event log is cleared. Why is that important? Because that's what ransomware almost always does. So if you would like for ThirdWall to send you a ticket when ransomware buries itself in one of your end users' computers, then please deploy this policy everywhere tomorrow. I know of no reason for you not to deploy this everywhere tomorrow. It is early warning for ransomware. This is the second of two specific ransomware policies. The first one, of course, was blocking app data executables. We do recommend that you limit it to just these 3 log files, security logs, because those are the ones that are most likely to get deleted by the ransomware, and the others may cause false alarms. So we recommend you just leave it to that. Next one down is equally popular with our clients, though. Alert on excess of failed logon events. Obviously looking for brute force logon attempts, but not just looking for, and not just alerting, we've probably misnamed this, but actually acting. There are some actions that you can dictate for ThirdWall to take should we detect an excess of failed logon events, a brute force attack. But first things first, what is excessive? Well, you define what excessive is for this given location using this slider and these buttons here. Right now it's set at 2 logon failures per rolling hour. These are rolling units, so per rolling hour. That's a little too sensitive. A lot of fat fingers out there, so I'm going to take it up to 10 logon failures per rolling hour. Now, by the way, all of our sliders, you can use the left and right arrows to fine tune. Okay, so if you so prefer. But 10, if any computer in this location exceeds 10 user logon failures in a rolling hour, then we will take these actions. Now I said user logon. If you select this option over here, then we will include network logon failures towards that threshold as well, which means you better clean up your environment first, or don't select this as an option. That's your two choices, because if you don't clean up your environment, you might get a whole bunch of tickets from this policy. So if you have this option selected, just word to the wise. So what are the actions that you can choose? Well, you can choose ticket only, which makes this, by the way, a no-brainer. We'll just send you a ticket if we detect a brute force logon attack that exceeds your criteria. All of these options will also send you a ticket, by the way, so any and all of them, but we have a ticket only option. We have three different checkboxes that you can choose one, two, or all three of them if you wish. You can do an antivirus scan, which again, we will send you a ticket and kick off your antivirus, the one that you've got associated with this computer via your Automate settings. This is basically a no-brainer as well, because nobody knows that the AV scan is happening and you get a ticket. You can also lock out that computer. Now, this is not a no-brainer. Under this, we will kick everybody off the computer, everybody, and then we will disable all local accounts. So the only way back on to this computer is if you have domain creds, and we do clear the cache, so you actually have to know the domain creds to get back into this computer. So it's more secure than it was just a few seconds ago. And last option is isolate. Isolate, we do not want this attack to spread to other computers. So isolate will disconnect this computer from everything. No more network, no more internet, nothing is connected to this computer anymore, with two very important exceptions. Still connected to your Automate server and to your Screen Connect / control server, so that your remote access tools are still working, but nothing else is connected to this computer. So we've restricted the ability of this virus or ransomware to spread, or whatever, this attacker to spread, but we have given you the tools to fix it without leaving your desk. Very, very important. And once you have fixed it, isolate and lockout are reversible on the Automate, on the third wall screen for that individual computer that was isolated or locked out. Okay. The last option here is a radio button, isolate and shut down. So it's the same isolate feature, but then third wall will shut down that computer after it finishes isolating it. Notice the asterisk at the end of shutdown. If it's a server, we won't shut it down, but if it's a workstation, we will. So when you turn it back on, it will be in an isolated state. You can fix it and then remove the isolation again on that computer's screen for Automate, or for third wall. All right, so that's this one. Very popular policy that most of our clients do across the board. Monitor for ransomware attacks. This one is perhaps our most popular. Kind of, it's either this one or the logon reporting, one of those two. But this is the third of 3 layers of ransomware protection. This is going to look for ransomware attack in progress. So how does it work? Well, when you turn it on, we are going to deploy 4 bait files, like phishing bait, or you could call them canary files or honeypots. Those are all valid terms. And we're going to put an instantaneous monitor on those, looking for content change. And if we see content change, we will assume that's ransomware attack, encrypting those files, because nothing and nobody should be changing the content of these files. And if they do, it's reasonable to assume that that's ransomware. And then we'll take the actions that you have specified over here. Now, these are all similar. We can do ticket only, very similar options to up here. Everything, again, generates a ticket. You can isolate and shut down. You can run an antivirus scan. You can isolate, or you can disable the volume shadow service. Again, you can do all 3 checkboxes if you want. Volume shadow service will further isolate those volume shadow copies from the attacker. Now, this is the only policy that we have where you must select from the list of your available Automate templates, and you can create a new one if you want to, select how you want us to notify you. We suggest that you create a ticket and do something even more serious, like raising an alert, which again, you can define that in your templates. in your Automate tools. But maybe send somebody a text or ring their phone or an email. But something more urgent than just create a ticket is probably in order here. This is an attack in progress right now that you probably want to respond to quickly. Now, we don't hide those bait files by default. You can if you'd like, so that people don't see them. We put them in every end user's primary documents folder, usually my documents, right, or just documents. Um, if you don't want them to see those, hide the bait files. We can't tell you how a given ransomware might react to that. Might be more juicy, might be less juicy. For encryption, we don't know. We don't write ransomware, but you have that option to hide them. Whether you hide them or not, people might still be able to see them if they're running with File Explorer set to show hidden files. So we always recommend that you tell people that these files are going to be there and they might see them. Otherwise, they're going to say, hey, what is this? And they might delete them. They might open them up and change them. They might just call you up and say, what are these? So they might create extra work. So tell them that they're there. So what are you going to tell them? Well, our files by default have third wall in the file name. But you, before you deploy this, or again afterwards, you can change it, but you can change that to whatever you want. It's a global setting. So we're going to go back to the system dashboard where we were earlier, and we're going to change to this screen here, ransomware monitor settings. We got various global settings. One of them is this one. Change the custom file name so it's no longer third wall. Put your company's name there so that when end users see it, they're less likely to be concerned. Okay? You can also put it in a subfolder if you want to. So instead of being in the primary documents folder, they get put in a subfolder of the primary documents folder, which by the way works for redirected folders as well. All this works on local or redirected, whatever is the primary documents folder. So there you go. You can bury that. Now you can bury that in multiple levels. There's a description here with help that will help you figure out how to do that. And it will also help you figure out how to do this static path. The static path, you just put a static path here and it will be the same for everybody with some dynamic changes based on drive availability. But essentially this is put there for servers because servers may not have users. And remember, we're putting these files in the users, the primary documents folder. So the static folder will add four more bait files to every single computer, not just servers, to every single computer in the static path that you designate. If it's not there, we will create it. And that will then have bait files available for those servers where there's no user or no user logging in, because we can only put those in users files when the user's logged in. So anyway, that's what that's for. And again, there's documentation or help with the help button there for how to use all of this. All right, back to here. The last option here is alert on delete. If you don't select this and somebody or something deletes a file, no harm, no foul. We just recreate it. Okay. But if you select this, then what's going to happen is as soon as a file gets deleted, is we will take whatever actions you have selected here. Why? Because some variants of ransomware do not encrypt the target. Instead, they create a copy, then they encrypt the copy, and then they delete the original, trying to get around systems like we devised, honeypots and bait files. So in that instance, once they delete the file, then we got them. So that's why that's there as an option. Might create more false alarms, might not, but we make it as an option for you as to how you want to work that. Last option here, alert on unencrypted disk. This is simply going to send you a ticket when we find an internal drive that is not BitLocker encrypted. I'll say that again, BitLocker. Do not use this particular policy if you do not have, if you're not using BitLocker. Any other thing, no encryption or other encryptions, you really don't want to use this. This is something our HIPAA clients requested, and we're happy to do that. So and you can restrict that to laptops only if you so prefer. Okay, back to the security overview. I could have been hitting save all along. I'm finally going to hit save, and we're issuing all these commands now. And at the end of that, we're going to issue an update config within Automate, which is what causes all these to then happen. Usually takes less than a minute for all these to happen because we're using commands, so it's pretty fast. Notice that a couple of these are light green, the Windows 10 keylogger and the disable right to optical media. That means they are active, they're turned on, but they have at least one computer with an exception to those policies that is not being impacted by the policies themselves. Let's go take a look at how we do that. Go to the computer screen. I've got one up. There is an Automate computer screen, pretty standard. It has the plugin symbol at the top. We're going to right click, go to third wall, and go to third wall on a single computer. So again, this is third wall on one individual computer. We do have nice colors again to make it easy to use. Orange, as you see from our legend, is the computer exception is enabled. And sure enough, we have two oranges. And if you read carefully, we are blocking the disable Windows 10 keylogger policy from applying to this computer. We're also blocking the disable write to optical media policy from applying to this computer. So that's how you have to read that. The other colors, we have green, which means, hey, blocking green means, well, let me say it, let me back up. Green means the location policy is active, but there's no exception has been applied to that particular policy. So you can see that many of these policies are turned on. They are impacting this computer right now with restrictions. Yellow means the location policy is not turned on. You can see a number of them, and therefore there are no restrictions being applied by those at the policy level. We can make an exception to either type of those. So if I pick a yellow one and click OK here, then we've preemptively made an exception. Later on, if I disable SMBV1, it will not apply to this computer. I've blocked it from applying to this computer. What if it's already green? For instance, there's the restrict local admin tools policy, which is turned on. Oh man, I have a technician sitting in front of that computer that needs to get the registry editor. So what do I do now? Well, come here, click this, make an exception. And we're going to make it temporary because this particular policy is turned on. I can do a temporary exception to this policy. And again, I get that slider. I'm going to give them, 14 minutes. Sounds reasonable. We've just issued an undo on this one computer for this one location. And it is, within a matter of seconds, going to be that functionality is going to be available to whoever's at this computer. Now remember, with restrict local admin tools, it may require a sign out, sign back in to get access to those tools. Okay, especially for those two I mentioned earlier. So just be aware of that. And in 14 minutes, this policy is going to be re-enabled and the protections are going to come back on this computer after 14 minutes, which is what I selected. Okay, so that's making exceptions. And to remove them, pretty simple as well. Just click them, get rid of it, and yes, that is gone. Okay, let's move down to the bottom here. I'm going to go all the way to the utility buttons down here. These are important. And again, there's some more information about this in our documentation. If you want to do an app data scan on a single computer and add to your list, click here and it will kick off that scan on this one computer and then bring that to that client level screen so you can then add it to the client level exceptions. So it's still a client level exception. We just give you the ability to do a scan on a single computer. Okay? These two buttons are all about when you want to move a single computer from one Automate location to another Automate location. When you do that, you want to clean up that computer from a third wall perspective before you move it. Why? Because you really don't want to drag those restrictions that are embedded into, in many cases, the registry. If you drag a computer, move a computer from one location to another, then it will keep those registry settings because there's no reason for us to remove them, and those restrictions will be in place in the new location, whether you want them there or not. So before you move a computer, please come here and click Accept All. Click Yes, and we're going to make, for every single policy that is currently on in this location, we're going to issue an undo on this one computer. We're also going to preemptively issue an exception for everything else, but we're actually issuing undos for every policy that this computer shows is on on this page. Okay, and then I'm going to wait, give it a minute or two for all these commands to go through, and then I'm going to physically move or logically move this computer with Automate to the other location. That's all great. Now, once it's there, I'm going to hit Reset and get rid of all the exceptions. That's what the Reset button does. And again, all the commands are going out to get rid of the exceptions. When that happens, whatever policies are turned on in the new location are going to see this computer and say, oh, new computer for this location, and start those monitors are going to check, and within 5 minutes going to apply all the restrictions that are appropriate for the new location. So that's how this works, and you should do that every time you move a computer. Otherwise, you might have some, why do I have those restrictions? Uh, Puzzled looks on computers that you did move. Okay, let's move from there to the emergency action buttons. These are fun and powerful. The isolate button you've seen on one of our policies or two of our policies, and lockout on one of our policies. These are the manual equivalents of those. So let's say that somebody calls up your technician and says, oh, I've got a virus. What should I do? Today, your technician is going to say one of two things, almost for sure. Please turn off that computer, stop the spread, right? Or please unplug that computer, the blue cable from that computer, the Ethernet. And hopefully they'll do that. But again, the idea is stop this virus from spreading. Now, how are you going to fix that computer? Oh, yeah, you're rolling a truck. Get out the keys, send somebody out there. Might take minutes, might take hours. It's inefficient. The computer's down for an extended period of time during all that drive time, and your technician is gone. Therefore, you've got a problem. Well, don't do that anymore. Instead, come to this screen for that computer, click the isolate button. Once you click isolate, we get a choice to isolate it or not, and we're going to go ahead and issue that isolate feature. And this, as you may recall, is going to disconnect this computer from everything except for the Automate server and the Screen Connect or control server. So you still have your remote tools connected to this computer, but you've stopped it from spreading from anywhere else. You can then fix it without ever leaving your desk. And once you fixed it, you notice how this is turned green and it says restore network. Just click it again. We'll reverse the process, reconnect it to everything, and you fixed this computer and reconnected it, stop the spread, all right here from your desktop, never leaving your desk. So while that's reconnecting, there it goes. Let me talk about these three buttons. Different situation. These are all about lost or stolen computers. Let's say somebody left their computer at Starbucks. Just click here. We will send out a command to lock the screen, and it will lock. Anybody with valid credentials can get back in, though. Lockout, you've seen that before with one of our policies. Remember, it kicks everybody off. So this is a little bit more severe. Kicks everybody off, disables all local accounts. Only somebody who has domain creds and can enter them will be able to get back in. And again, this is reversible, just like isolate was. So whether these features are kicked off manually with these buttons or by policy, you reverse them right here. Okay? And last is everybody's favorite, annihilate. Now, annihilate, along with other functions, is restricted. You must be a third wall admin within Automate permissions to be able to annihilate a computer. Nobody has third wall admin privileges out of the box. So even a super admin can't do this until they give themselves third wall admin privileges. We didn't want this to be used accidentally by anybody. So I've got third wall admin privileges within Automate. I'm going to click here and I'm going to go, oh, I got a choice here too. I can do a quick annihilate or a secure annihilate. Well, quick annihilate is going to delete the documents folder and then destroy the operating system. That'll happen all pretty quickly, and you know that computer is going to be gone soon. Or I can choose secure annihilate. Takes a little longer, but it does the same thing. First, it deletes the documents folder, and then before it destroys the operating system, it will do a 3-pass overwrite over all the files that have been deleted so that nobody can then yank the hard drive and recover those files from using another computer. So get rid of those files and then destroy the operating system. Again, that's going to take longer, but it is more secure. If I click annihilate again, then I have one more safeguard. I have to enter my valid Automate username in this field or it's not going to work. So as you can see, there's no such thing as an accidental annihilation. It is a very deliberate act and well safeguarded. So anyway, obviously I'm going to just click cancel and get out of all that. So that's third wall on a single individual computer. Let me go back to where I was on a single location screen. So this is where we just went through and did one policy at a time for one location. Took a little while, didn't it, to do one turn through all of a single location. Well, what if you got multiple locations? You might have 10, you might have 100. Our biggest client has over 3,000 locations. So there has to be a more effective way, right? And of course there is. We call it profiles down here, profile controls. You can select a profile, you can create profiles and then apply them. Lots of different things you can do with profiles. I like this set of policies and the settings that I put in them, and I want to apply this to an entire client. Okay, so I'm going to go down here. I'm going to use this button to save this current configuration as a profile. I'm going to name it Scott. Click OK. And I've it already exists. I'm just going to overwrite it. All right, it's created. Now, we recommend that you create profiles on a location that has no computers in it. Therefore, it's not going to impact any computers, right? You can go ahead and create the profile, which I just did. And then, if you want to, you can erase the settings on this entire location. So if you go down here, the bottom left, you can see next to our logo, there is a counterclockwise arrow. I'm going to click on that. This is an undo all for all the policies on this entire location. Click here. Yes, I want to undo all of them. No, I don't want to abort. Now I've just issued an undo for all of these policies, and now I have a clean location. So if this were the one where I'm making profiles, great. I've now cleared it out and I can create another profile. But I have stored that profile, so it's available to me, and I'm going to go down here to this drop-down list, this profile, and I'm going to click on this, and look, there is Scott. Now, a word, this function, this drop-down list is restricted to third wall admin users as well. So if you're not a third wall admin, you cannot do this. Again, make sure that you're a third wall admin. Same thing for this undo all. This is third wall admins only. So I'm going to go ahead and select that profile called Scott. There is a bunch of blue, and blue, as you can see from our legend, means pending changes by profile. Okay, I can click Save, and I am now going to issue these policies to this entire location just like that. So I didn't have to go one policy at a time, right? Now I'm going to do the undo all feature again. Click yes, click no, get rid of all of them. So the reason I did that is I want to show you a couple of properties and thoughts on profiles. Okay, one of them is we recommend that you create a profile of no-brainers. Now remember, I showed you on our website that policy matrix that in onboard your clients that allows you to take a look at what no-brainers are. So we recommend you choose ones out of that you like and create a no-brainer profile. Okay. But on that same page, under onboard your clients, you're going to find a few documents as well. One of them is a PDF talking about no-brainers again. But these two are onboarding documents. And again, this can be used to onboard your clients or onboard people within your internal organization if you prefer, if you're not a service provider. But if you look at these, this one will show you, if you start on page 2, every single policy we have, why it's important, and what's the impact on end users. It's a very brief document. It's a very brief description of our 58 policies and allows you to use this as a template for interviewing your clients or your end users, your managers, to find out what, in addition to no-brainers, should be put on those computers. So that's what that is. Now the other document that goes with this is, again, under onboard your client, this checklist. I've already downloaded it, so let me just show that to you. It is here. And that just shows you all of our policies listed here, what the key benefit is, and what the user impact is. So you can use this column over here as to define, put in your entry. What am I going to activate it? Yes or no? And if so, what setting am I going to put in it? So you can record your answers here. So those are a couple of tools we created to help you to do a better job of creating the right profiles. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to one that's built in. We have a few that are built in for you. You can use them or not. We really recommend that you create your own. But I'm going to use this one called Third Wall No-Brainers. Again, we recommend you create your own. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to do that. And you can see there's a bunch of blue. Now, instead of clicking Save here on this one location, I'm instead going to click Apply Profile. I could, by the way, clear the profile. I could even delete this profile from the memory, and I would no longer have it available to me. But I'm going to apply the profile. Click here, and look, I get a choice. Instead of just saving to one location, which this button would have done, I can choose to save to just this location, or to every location in this entire client, or to every location, all clients. So this is why this is user class protected. Kind of a dangerous tool in the wrong hands. I'm going to go ahead and click this client only and click Save. And now I am issuing this group of policies to every single client or location in this client, just like that. Now, I am going to go interview the client using those tools I just showed you and create another profile and name it Profile for Client ABC. Now, I'm not really going to do that because in the training session, I'm just going to use this policy or this profile as a surrogate. So I'm going to choose this profile, but you would select one that you used for this client or this group of locations, whatever it is for you. And look, there's 3 more blue ones. And I'm now going to apply this profile to this entire client. Click Save. And yep, I want to apply those. And sure enough, those 3 turn green. Now notice what happened to the rest of them that were on this page. Nothing. They're still there. Profiles never ever undo or remove policies that are already there. No matter how those policies got there, either through previous application of a profile or just one at a time, profiles never ever undo. They can modify, they can add to, but they can never undo or remove what's already there. That way you can layer a profile on top of what's already there, like I just did. Layered one profile on top of another, and it's okay. That's a very efficient way to do it. Plus, if I go in to any of these and add or undo, yep, let's get rid of that one. I am modifying the policies in this one location, and it no longer conforms to the profiles that were used for this location. That's okay. The profiles never ever come back and demand or enforce conformity to the profiles. They're just a stamp. I'm going to put these policies with these settings on right now, but they do not come back and enforce that later. Why? So you can then customize every location exactly how you want, and the profiles won't care. Okay, so that's how profiles work. All right, that's covered all about profiles, all about policies, all about individual computers. We've covered a lot of stuff. The other things I want to get into include global settings. So let me go back to our system dashboard and talk about our global settings. We've seen a couple of them: ransomware monitor settings and global whitelisting for app data. There's also some isolate settings. When anybody is ever isolated, either automatically by one of our policies or by you manually, there's a message is going to pop up on their screen, and you can customize that message for when the isolate is it happens, and also when the isolation is removed. So please do customize that to whatever you want. Okay. There's also this isolate auto restore. This, we highly recommend you put a number in there. This is going to help you later if the following conditions occur. A computer gets isolated by either a policy or by you manually using the button. Normally, Third Wall will not disconnect that computer from the Automate server, but we've seen it happen twice in a couple of years, and we don't think we even did that. But if it happens, then that computer is no longer connected to anything. It is completely disconnected. If it's disconnected from Screen Connect and from the Automate server, which we've seen again twice in 3+ years. If that happens, well, how are you going to get the isolation removed? We can send you a command that you can then have somebody locally run. You can email it to somebody and they can run it, and it will work. So that will get rid of the isolation. But what if that computer is restricted from using command prompt? Because you can do that with Third Wall, right? Using our restrict local admin tools. Well, now that computer's toast. That's why we recommend you put a number in here, because what this does is it says, it looks for three conditions locally. It doesn't have to be connected to anything. Am I isolated? Yes. Can I communicate with the automated server? No. Has this amount of time passed? And I've got 60 minutes in there now. If the answer to all three of those is as I described, then it will say, oh, emergency, emergency, get rid of the isolation, and it will remove the isolation automatically after that period of time. Okay? So it prevents you from having a dead computer. That's why we recommend it. So it's a global setting. There are some utilities. You really won't be using any of these without our being involved, so you can ignore those. There is a way to set some customization of communications. For instance, the assigned alert template for everything except for one policy, the monitor for ransomware policy, is by default create a ticket. You can change that if you so choose, however you want. And there you go. That will change the alert, how we notify you if we need to for any of the other 57 different policies. There's also the ability to change globally the alert category to whatever you want. And again, you can make up new ones within Automate and assign them, but this will allow you to change the alert category for third wall tickets. A lot of our clients who have passed through to ConnectWise Manage, for instance, do that so that third wall tickets go to a particular board. And then there's also an ability to change the administrator alert template, which has some, refer to our documentation for this. I won't get into that. This does a couple of different things. It's very limited. So that's that. There's a monitor frequency, which we don't recommend you change that at all. It's there mostly for our use as well. Everything on this entire page is limited to third wall admins only. Everything. So there are a few things that are limited to third wall admins, as you can see. Nobody without third wall admin privileges can use this feature. Okay. However, I just changed on the alert communications, the template, and the category for every policy except for that one, which is dictated by the selection of the alert template within that policy, the monitor for ransomware attacks. But if I go back to the control center page, okay, instead of looking at clients, let me look at groups. Okay, and you notice there's a third wall group or set of groups really. I'm going to expand that, and those are our 7 subcategories that we were looking at earlier. I can expand those and find a particular policy that I want. I'm going to double click on it. You can do this with any of our policies except for the monitor for ransomware attack, which is all governed by that one by what you choose in the location screen. But this is that one policy. I'm going to go here and look at computers. And then I'm going to go to remote monitors. And you can see here is that policy. I click on it, I highlight it, and now I can change the ticket category. I can change the template. I can change basically whatever I want to for that monitor of how I want it to behave within this across the board for this one policy. Okay, so that's available to you if that's useful. All right. We have a couple more data views and one report, so let me show you those. I'm going to go back to the report center. So back to the report list, you can see there is one called the Third Wall Client Audit Report. This is what you're going to hand your auditors and or your clients or whoever's interested. It is a client level report, so I'm going to choose Third Wall, where we've made a bunch of policies, and I'm going to view the report. You can automate this using the scheduling wizard if you want to. But this will show you for that client and within the client by location every single policy that is currently active, and it will show you, I don't have any right now because I removed them all, every single exception to the policy that to any given policy where there's an exception. So that is a powerful report to show to, again, your auditors or to your clients, whoever needs proof that you are protecting those computers. Okay, so that's that report. There are some other data views, so let's go back to the primary control center and look at the data views. Okay, I'm just going to right click at the we'll go at the third wall level, third wall client level, and let's go to data views, and there's the third wall. So some other data views that we've got. There is a third wall computer audit log and a third wall location audit log. So they're separated in the list, but the location audit log and the computer audit log will show you every command issued within the automated system by you and your colleagues. Who did it, when they did it, up to 60 days worth. So this will show you that. Pretty powerful report or data view that you can find out who's been doing what within Automate at either the computer or the location level. Okay, so that's one or two of our data views. Let's go right click again, go to data views again, third wall. There is the enabled policy. This shows you every single policy that is turned on, when it was turned on, and uh, the again, you can very quickly find out for any given client or location what's turned on and when it was turned on. Pretty powerful for you to find out. A couple more data views to look at. Third wall data views. Again, down to third wall, there is the a list of, let me see if I can find it. There it is, computer exceptions. So you can find every exception. This will show it to you. And then that's going to look just like the enabled policy one, except for it'll show you exceptions. And since I have no exceptions, I'm not going to show you that one. There's also this license description. This will be useful for you to show you which computers are currently currently have active policies and are being counted towards your license fee when you pay us. So that's a good way to find out what's being charged by who. Okay. Anyway, that almost wraps it up. One last thing to talk about, which is permissions. So I've already mentioned permissions some. Permissions are dictated in, there are three levels. The default is just the default, and it is everything that I've shown you except for those things that are reserved for the third wall admins. And third wall admin includes this, undo all, it includes the drop down list, it includes everything in the integration screen, and includes the annihilate button. So those are the things that are reserved, and this is all described in our documentation under permissions. In fact, we can see if we can go there under our documentation, and it is, I think around page 16 or 17 now. Getting there. Permissions, there it is. Permissions. So this will describe all the permissions, and there's default permissions, it has everything except for these. Those are all limited to third wall admins. We describe how to use the permissions feature of Automate to give yourself third wall admin. But there's another level called third wall restricted. Now, third wall restricted is essentially the default level of access, but we take away some big features. The big features we take away is basically everything on the location screen. You can see, but you can't touch. So when they go in here, all of these will be grayed out, and they will not, of course, be able to use the profiles either. So they will not be able to use anything on this particular page, and that's third wall restricted. All right, that is all there is to know about about third wall. We hope that you found this valuable. Hope that you are able to then now move forward and use third wall effectively. We do support you when you're using third wall. If you go back to our website and go to contact, there is our contact for technical support. Just drop your issue to us and we'll get back to you and of course take care of you. Anyway, thank you again for being a third wall client. We greatly appreciate it. We hope this is proving invaluable to you, and I hope I've given you enough background to be a very effective user of the third wall plugin. Again, our thanks, and be safe. Take care.